What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and welcome to Ask TNH. Today we're going to be talking about Rolex and how, although iconic, they really have a knack for making some extremely ugly watches sometimes. So before we get into it, we'll do a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing, very aptly, a vintage Rolex, a solid gold Rolex, reference 1803, with a Buckley Roman dial. This watch is absolutely gorgeous. This was sourced through the theoandharris.com website by me for a client. So this watch is sold, but for other awesome watches, particularly Rolexes and Omegas and some chronographs, don't forget to check out the watch shop at theoandharris.com. Vintage is better. Period. Anyway, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so I'm a Rolex fanatic. I talked about this in another episode, which Anna can put the link below, why Rolex is king. I think, to go off on a little second, before I go into the episode, why Rolex impresses me so much is not just their watches. Rolex, in making their watches, to me, expresses or demonstrates their incredible understanding of not just one group of people, but of the world. And that's really it. I think that Rolex really understands, from their chronographs to their dress models to everything, not just how watch people want to buy, but how people who want watches want to buy. And that's amazing. I don't think that any other brand does that so well. Other brands, to give some contrast, like Breguet, for example, they don't make watches for the world, they make watches for people who like Breguet watches. That's it, which is it's very different, it's very isolating. Whereas Rolex has managed to make a design that is very uniquely Rolex and very isolating in many ways and very specific, and yet still almost, it has no language barriers, and that's what I love. I think it's incredible. Anyway, although I could go off on a poetic rant for hours about Rolex and what they mean to me, and they were my first watch, and they'll probably be my last watch one day, who knows, still, holy shit, are they good at making some very ugly watches. Right now, in today's episode, we're going to talk about their gold watches, particularly. Rolex is famous for gold. It was both the Day Date and the Date Just on the wrists of world leaders and on super famous celebrities and really just successful people with like liquid cash. That's what kind of made the allure. If your neighbor or if someone you knew had a Day Date, you were like, fuck, like, that guy's cool, like shit, he must do really, really well. And that's kind of, why Rolex became the crown, and their logo is very, fitting to what they've become, even though there's really no correlation apart from, waterproof and movement between a Day Date and a Submariner. The Submariner has been able to, become a real luxury item, whereas years ago it was a tool item. But that's really all because of the Day Date and the gold watches. They've basically owned gold watches. But still, they've managed to, in my opinion, and in many models, not overall, but just make some incredibly ugly pieces. So I'm going to go model by model and talk about, each thing from GMT to Submariner and chronograph to PearlMaster. God forbid. But we're going to go through all these models and talk about some of the best of gold and some of the absolute most disgusting things I've ever seen. First, let's do GMT. Okay, the GMT Master was originally produced in gold, although it seems like it makes no sense because it doesn't. They did make GMT Masters in gold. These were tool watches, and they were ahead of their time because in the, I think, late 50s, when the 6542 was produced in gold, it was still, like I said, 6542. It was still the first reference. The gold didn't, the gold wasn't entered into later, like the Submariner. The Submariner wasn't made into gold until the 1688. So that's much later. That watch became kind of synonymous with 80s really, 70s as well, but 80s is where that watch kind of came into play. But the GMT had it for longer. So this is a model that really should kind of play with gold in a real fun way, but they don't. They're very ugly in my opinion in many ways. But we'll talk about the best one. The best GMT in gold in my opinion is the Pepsi. They make a white gold Pepsi, which has nothing to do with the original GMT in gold, because that one was red Bakelite. But this is beautiful. They're doing this for a lot of different reasons. One, to play cat and mouse with consumers because they want Pepsi bezels, but for whatever reason it is, I think it's beautiful. It's understated, it's tasteful. I think the bezel is beautiful. It's classic Rolex, but with a really cool, interesting, luxurious, blingy, but not so blingy twist. And for that reason, I love this watch. But, then there's a middle ground watch for me, and then there's a left field, just thing that I don't really like at all. The middle ground is the solid gold GMT, with black dial, black bezel. I'm not a fan. I think that the black and I think that black and gold are very abrupt. They don't really, I don't think they're very suiting. There's nothing to cool down the gold. It's like a stop. I think that color and design is a lot about balance. And with a really warm, gold, there should be something to like give it a little bit of leeway to play and be not so kind of ostentatious. But the black kind of just like stops, it puts the gold to like a halt, and it's a really weird aesthetic in my opinion. But still, it's not the worst thing in the world. Now we have another iconic Rolex GMT Master in gold with the same bezel but with a green dial. This watch to me is really just awful. I've put it. Let's be very clear. I've seen this watch on some people's wrists and loved it. I've thought, wow, that looks really cool, or maybe the idea of the watch is very cool. But I mean, in the metal and in photos, out of context, just the watch itself, I can't stand it. I don't think that the gold and the green, play well together at all. This to me has no relevance to classic Rolex. It's just a weird color combo. So for that reason, I mean, once again, I get that green is Rolex, but it still doesn't do anything for me. This is probably the least offensive line in gold, in my opinion, but I still don't agree with all of its choices. Going on to more, and we're going to get progressively uglier and uglier as we continue to go. Now let's go into the Daytona. Once again, we love Daytona. These were real sports watches, originally I think called Le Mans. I mean, these watches were specifically designed to be tools, once again, like the Submariner and the GMT, no question. They started off in a very conservative way. They were very simple watches, 36 millimeters, I believe, obviously pushers, and that's it. If you look at these watches from back in the day, there were no frills in no way. These watches were very just to the point. They had really no decoration. It was just straight to the point. Daytona, this is the tool by Rolex. Done. For racers. So for that reason, I thought it was super interesting when they became, gold. When the Daytona started really becoming popular in gold. This was probably, once again, an 80s, 90s kind of popular thing. I'm not as interested in when things were introduced as to when they became popular and really worn. So I think that the Daytona catching on was a funny thing. I think that the Daytona made sense in gold. Not because it had any relevance to the original Daytonas, but I think because it was a more expensive Rolex than the Submariner, and in gold, and a sport, so it wasn't like an old man watch like a Day Date. There was a great place in the market for it. I don't love gold Daytonas. Some I really like, but as a whole, I think they're a little bit odd. Still, I can completely see why these watches exist, no question. But as with all things, Rolex does them really well and then does them really poorly. So the first one I want to pull up is the white gold Daytona with a blue dial. This was introduced last year at Baselworld, I believe, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think it's one of the best Daytonas out there. I really do. I think that the sunburst dial and really everything. Once again, I like the white gold. I'm a big yellow gold fan, but still, there's something about the white gold that has a lot of just, understated elegance to it. I think the red instrumentation is gorgeous and overall great watch. But on the other hand, to take it like radically to the other side, look at this yellow gold with this, once again, with this green dial. What is it with Rolex that like they insist on making, like the gold watch in a very, very ugly way? I just don't get it. I think that with the gold bracelet and case, the dial should be even more subdued than with the white gold. The white gold they chose to go with blue, which was definitely loud, but this green, where it should be a more quiet and soft tone, is like this explosion of just ugly. Was it emerald? Like, oh my God. It's just amazing to me that one of the most prestigious companies in the world could produce something that I just find so just objectively ugly. And please, guys, disagree with me. That's totally fine. I just think it is funny that they could just produce something like this. And once again, keeping in those red instrumentation accents. I mean, what? It's gold, green, and red. What are you talking about? Where did the thoughtful design from the balance of the white gold, the blue, and the red, where did it go in making this watch? To me, it's like they said, oh, great designers, very good job on the white gold. So basically, Rolex must have said to their designers, guys, great job with the white. I mean, it's so complimentary to itself. Wonderful job. Do me a favor, do the opposite with the gold, please. I want you guys to ruin it. Like, just make it almost like a joke. And that's what I'm seeing. It's not just that I don't like it. It's that I think that there's no balance at all. And obviously Rolex knows how to design things. That's why it confuses me. And now the Day Date, the watch that really made gold and Rolex the king of the world. There's almost no other line of watches that executes gold so well and then so badly. It's really almost incredible. Some examples that I like. The Platinum Day Date with this I got like iceberg blue dial. I think it's gorgeous. I love the little texture there. I wish it was raised and not flat, but still, I think it's a really pretty watch. Once again, bringing it back to balance. You have this kind of cold dial with a bracelet that would be cold otherwise, but almost warms it up. I mean, although this is a cold watch, no question, it doesn't seem like a one-sided watch. It seems like it has, like, once again, that balance. Whether it's the texture doing that, whether it's the white from the disc wheel and the day wheel, I don't know. But this watch seems like it makes sense. Throw on the smooth bezel, and even more so. I mean, this watch, although a solid gold Rolex Day Date, and definitely, loud and noticeable, is still kind of subdued and smooth, and like I said, bring it back to this word, balanced. Bring it to the next one, another Rolex Day Date in white with a beautiful blue sunburst dial, but in a deep way, deeper than the Daytona that I talked about before. Another crazy good example. Then you have, to be really classic, just to show you guys that I do love yellow gold. It's not yellow gold that I hate, it's their execution. I mean, look at this yellow gold Day Date. Obviously, presidential bracelet and all that. I did smooth bezel, but you could even pick fluted. I love the fluted bezel. With this, they call it silver dial. I mean, like really just a pretty watch. This watch makes sense. Is it the watch a cocaine dealer would wear? No question. A very successful cocaine dealer. But still, to me, it shows that Rolex understands that, okay, this dial fits with this watch, no question. I mean, it just makes sense. It's smooth, it's streamlined, it's not abrupt. Nothing about it is fighting against each other. The elements complement each other. Take the same watch and throw on a diamond pave dial with like green, like emerald green. Once again, that green bizarre thing. Arabic numerals, like race car things. What? What are you talking about? How can someone so tasteful to make the first watch also make the second? It doesn't make any sense. And that's not even the worst one. Keep looking. Look at this lilac version. Look at this mother of pearl computer dial with Rolex written all over it. Like, what are we talking about, guys? How do you go from a company that is just so intelligent and so refined with production of their gold watches and then like make something just so damn ugly? It's just beyond me. I could see like special orders. I could see that. Like, okay, like we'll make this for someone who's willing to pay for it, fine. But to be in your production line, to show this as one of your core models, that's bad. Now let's bring this to like the peak of the mountaintop of the ugliest gold Rolexes, the PearlMaster. It's like a watch for your wife. Like that's like the whole marketing thing. What? Is your wife blind? And even if she is, she doesn't deserve that. Like, we can't just like throw shit at blind people. That's not fair. This is an ugly watch. Nothing about it is okay. It's like it's got this really curved, like smooth edge thing going on with this just massive amount of diamonds. It's like if an oyster case and bracelet watch like gained a bunch of weight and not to like stock up to lift weights, but like just got fat. It looks like Jake LaMotta, End of Raging Bull. Like you used to be like the tight, and now you're like this disgusting. Like it's just gross. This watch makes no sense to me. And further, I mean, there's no way to make this watch without being totally ostentatious. Forget the fact that I hate the case and hate the bracelet. Forget that. Just talk about, I mean, just the pure design of the dials. This is the most daring and daringly awful, decisions that they make here. I mean, look at these dials. Look at the diamond, bezels here. They're like bizarre. It makes no sense. These are, without question, the worst gold Rolexes, or worst Rolexes, and certainly worst gold Rolexes in production now and probably ever. To bring this home, guys, I don't want to just heckle. I mean, I am just heckling gold Rolexes, of course, but I did compliment a lot of them. I love gold Rolexes. They're probably my favorite watches, no question. They may be hard to believe after watching this video, but it's the truth. The Day Date is one of my favorite watches ever. A solid gold GMT Master. I mean, an incredible piece. A solid gold, Submariner. Of course, I lean vintage, but still, I showed you some modern gold Rolexes, yellow, I would even go to rose, and in white, that I really do love. But it's just unbelievable to me that Rolex would pander and cater to such ugly taste. That just really does bother me. You can't tell me that these people think this is pretty. Impressive maybe in their, quality of diamonds, but who gives a I mean, to me, this is just awful. And what makes it so bad is that Rolex, this is just my perception, is supposed to be the brand that gives gold watches a great name, right? They're supposed to stand for tasteful, sometimes a little bit gaudy, successful, just like an all-around, refined hunk of gold on the man on the wrist of a successful man or woman. I think that is just a really, I don't want to say like poetic, because it's not, but it just speaks to an era so specifically, and that's what I love about them. I think the watches themselves are ostentatious and gaudy and over the top. If you're wearing a $40,000 solid gold Rolex, like, you're kind of an asshole. But I can defend that in a very, like, just fun way. Like, oh, but it's just so good looking. It's so handsome. Look at the balance. I mean, look at everything about it. It just makes sense. But when you throw these things together, when you put a yellow gold oyster bracelet, cosmograph case, and just this bright green emerald dial, I just don't admire you as much anymore as designers, and it's just, it is depressing, kind of, in a very watch geeky way, and it is sad. It's sad to see a company that can do so much better do so poorly. Thank you guys so much for watching Ask TNH. Check out the watch shop at theoandharris.com. I promise you the only solid gold Rolexes that you'll find there are absolutely gorgeous. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching again, and have a great day.